conversation. Y'all ready? Let's go. No filter, no restrictions. You about to get my opinion in its purest form. So my words, don't try to spin them. What I said is what I said, and what I said I meant it. The gloves are off now when I'm coming out swinging. So engage in verbal combat, but you better be ready. Cause this here for me is light work, even if the topic's heavy. I'm ready for it all with no running from nothing. You just take the time to digest what I put in, no rushing. But time is moving, don't waste it. You want the real, come and face it. Come sit and talk to me if you want it straight without a chaser. And it might burn a little when you step on up to taste it, but it's nothing harsh, I promise. Just a little conversation.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the conversation with Harold and Dave. We have Dave here, and we have Harold, and of course, I am Keone back here in the background. What's going on, Dave? I see you reading. Are you reading the scroll at the bottom?
No, I'm trying to read. I'm just making sure what I'm like. What is all that crap under my name? Oh, that's right. Just host. You had me worried that you had my university's name on there, and we do not want that.
Oh no, I thought you were worried that I
No,
spelled
we
host.
need to not have that.
Yeah.
But I'm old and I can't see, and it's very little on my screen. But
Okay.
hi everyone. I'm Dave. I have no cojones.
Okay. Wow. You just be happy that I thought you were more worried that I spelled host and left out the S and the T, but we didn't do that. All right. So let's get ready for the conversation today.
That
And
would be a promotion for me. I'm thinking. I'm not cool enough to be a hoe. Anyway,
Wow.
while we're
Wow.
laughing, we're going to start with this, and it puts me in a little
I
bit
don't
of a
want my university.
conundrum. Charlie Kirk was assassinated
Oh yeah.
today, and I'm looking at it and it puts me in that weird place, almost like when you go to the funeral of the drug dealer in town and everybody says nice things. And I'm not here to bash Charlie Kirk. The man died today. And I was telling Harold earlier, I am human. I don't want to revel in anyone's death, especially someone who has family, kids. There are going to be people in mourning. And it does put people in this weird place of how am I supposed to feel about somebody who constantly attacked me? Some people feel like that. And some people say, well, it doesn't matter. Someone died, show your respects. So I'm not here to disrespect Charlie Kirk. I'm not here to show him great respect. I'm just covering that, he was assassinated today. No one, because of their political beliefs or ideologies, should be assassinated unless, we're not talking about Hitler here. Some people will make comparisons, but, we're not talking about Mussolini here. We're not talking about Saddam Hussein. We're talking about Charlie Kirk, who is not the leader of anything except for the organizations that he ran. So that happened today. So that's out there. If you two want to say anything before you move on to the next thing, go right ahead.
Thoughts and prayers.
Yeah. Well, I extend prayers, even though, like I said, I may have disagreed with him, from an ideological standpoint. The bottom line is it should not never escalate or elevate itself to the point to where life is lost. So with that,
Yeah.
with that said, I would just, extend prayers
Mhm.
to his family
Yeah.
and,
Oh, sorry.
and,
Yeah.
and healing.
Yeah. You have to do that because, some people reveled when Trump was attempted assassinated, and they're like, well, why do you care? I said, because I wouldn't want anybody reveling if someone tried to assassinate Barack Obama. So that just makes me a hypocrite. That's not something to revel into. So, what we want to talk about, we're going to talk about Trump's rapid firings because they're all over the place as usual. We're also going to talk on the continued war against education. But I want to start with the "you're fired" from The Apprentice that happens in the White House. So, the head of labor statistics put out the statistics of unemployment for African Americans and Hispanics, how it's gone down. They got fired. Someone was put in place to take over. And the ironic thing is the person that's in charge of labor statistics now puts out the statistics and says, well, actually, those statistics were wrong. It's actually worse than what was put out. So just firing people doesn't fix the problem.
No,
Well,
the data is what it is. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dave.
well, no, I think in this case, I looked up because I don't have in my mind,
Mhm.
I don't know how all these statistics are calculated. I'm aware that economic statistics are calculated from many sources, and it's
Mhm.
just mind-numbingly complex and boring.
Mhm.
frankly, how they do it. And the idea that you could tweak them is bizarre because there's so many things that go in there. And I looked it up, and it's this thing of like, look, the way they do it is they send out surveys,
Mhm.
and then the first report is the first batch of surveys that they sent out at that time, reporting that month. And then the next month, well, they get more surveys back, right?
Mhm.
And so the revisions that are done are simply more mail coming in, more information coming in, and not in any way controlled by anyone. It's just, it just happens organically. So when you have those revisions, when you see a huge drop like they did see, because the big thing, as I understood it, was the not the black and Hispanic employment, but the fact that the numbers were low and that the previous month's numbers had been revised. And that revision was much more of a drop or a change than normal. And so there was something about it that was weird. But the thing is, if you know how it's done, you don't shoot the messenger, you don't suspect the messenger. You say, hey, why is it that we see such a big difference from the first batch of surveys that came in and then the next batch? And if you thought about that for a while, you might, I don't know what you would have gotten out of it, but unfortunately, it's the lack of understanding of how things work that's just essential to how a lot of the politics work. And it can be on the left as well as the right, but I think it's very marked that there's this lack of understanding, or kind of intentional lack of trying to understand what's going on.
Well, Dave, that's been my biggest problem. No matter if you're on, like you said, either side, you could like Bush, you could like Barack, you could like Clinton, you could like all that. But when you're continuing to put people in places that don't have an understanding, you just said a lack of understanding of how things works. That's what we've been seeing since day one. That no one here wants to go get brain surgery, and someone walks in and goes, "Hey, this guy is a lifelong mechanic. We're going to let him do it."
Mm, might be interesting.
You mentioned brains and surgery, and we got to talk. In that vein, Kennedy,
Mhm.
RFK Jr. up there, um, talking about stuff and just not understanding how anything works, saying there isn't there aren't clinical experiment there isn't clinical support testing for uh the vaccines. And it's like, well, usually there isn't, because you're coming out with a new one, and what he's talking about is you got to have time, and you can't do that with the vaccines, right? And
Well,
so
they
you
well
have
they
other ways of testing
mhm.
them. The
well
Tylenol and pregnancy thing, right? He just doesn't understand. Yes, there were things that showed correlations between Tylenol use during pregnancy and autism. But then somebody did a study. They said, well, that's weird. They also understand that spurious relationships exist, and they asked the question that was the first thing I said. I said, is it the Tylenol, or is it the reason they took the Tylenol? Right? What could be possibly driving the link? And
Mm,
so there's an AMA study that they did with data from Sweden, and they looked at siblings. And so siblings of people with autism, they looked to see, hey, that pretty much controls for all the environmental and maternal hereditary things that might predispose somebody to being autistic. So we're comparing like to like. And in that study, they found no relationship between the Tylenol. So now we're back to, all right, what is it that made the women want the Tylenol? But again, you have to scratch the surface. You, by the way, though, if you type into Google Tylenol use during pregnancy, the number one hit is that study from JAMA. The evidence that we shouldn't worry about it. It's number one. So you didn't have to, forget going to the second
mm,
page.
go for it.
Number one, it is free. They have, talk about doing your own research. It's free for you to go and look at. But yeah, that's just, I'm sorry. I'm just, uh, it made a great uh, talking point for my class on political science research this week. So I got an education point out of it.
All right, Harold, while Dave's
What?
plane is still in the air.
All right, crash
Well,
burn,
two
Harold.
things real quick. I want to go back to the whole thing about labor statistics, firings, things of that nature. Just remember, it was just recently reported, but that we had over 350,000 Black women who lost their jobs so far this year. My thing is, I'm looking to see if there's a correlation between the fact that, is there a targeted interest in targeting Black women because they were 92% of the vote against this president. So is there a correlation there? I don't know. I haven't seen any additional data to suggest it. However, the evidence, in my opinion, is looking rather clear or clearer to me. Why would those individuals in those governmental positions be targeted? Now, jumping over to the issue
Wait,
of
I have a question about what you
hmm?
just said. So, do you think it's the women being targeted, or is it because those women primarily work in the positions that are being targeted? Because that's what people are going to say. No, it just happens that these positions that were targeted, you usually have minorities working on those positions. Because one people I left out was it wasn't just Hispanics and African Americans; it was also youth, and that's of every ethnicity background, even white. Youth employment has dropped as well. But go ahead, continue.
Yeah, but again, my thing is, how do you, again, looking at it much more closely, and again, you'd have to disaggregate that particular data, those data points to see exactly where they're going to lead us, and if there is a stronger correlation with that information. Now, stepping over to vaccines, since you guys brought up RFK lovingly, um, I think our attorney, a surgeon general here in Florida, is trying to outdo RFK with the banning of vaccine mandates. That we used to receive while we're in school, and so they're trying to say, he even used the
I,
term slavery as far as the
I,
mandate. I mean, listen, if I was at the institution that awarded him his degree, I would be calling him in the morning to say, listen, we want it back because obviously there's something wrong here. Um, but nonetheless, when we look at all that's transpiring, we know that RFK hasn't done any homework. Everything that he's moved towards or gravitated towards as far as his actions are motivated by what? His conspiracy theories. We knew it was coming because this is what he told us he believed. He shared his thoughts. And it did not, we knew that they were off base. We knew that they were errant, but still, he was chosen to do those things in which he said he was going to do. And unfortunately, now we have children, although he's ignored the measles outbreak in Texas, measles outbreak in Texas, where at least one child lost their life. So how is it that we sit here and look at this person or allow this individual to continue to make the decisions? I'm surprised that Congress has not lended their voice much more stronger to basically go against or hopefully unravel all that he is doing within the powers that he's been given by this administration. So
well, you're the
uh,
only
it,
one who's surprised. Two things. Number one, RFK. I didn't want to talk about him at vaccines. He didn't even know that the COVID vaccine went through clinical trials before they did. So there's that. Number two, the vaccine thing just drives me insane. You know what they do, and Dave can tell you. When you join the military, do you know what happens when you don't have certain vaccines? You don't get to take one every day. They just jam you full of freaking needles. So if you people out there who are anti-vax and don't want to get vaccinated, but you want to be a patriot and join the military, you're going to get stabbed about 40 times in one day. Okay, so save yourself the trouble. Dave, am I wrong?
Well, my recollection was three guns, and it's a cocktail. They have these
Well,
cocktails. I walked through a door as Private Hayes, right? Just
uh,
had my head shaved, and
uh,
there's a guy on either side, boom, boom,
yes,
and
yep,
then the dude
yep,
puts one down, picks up another one, and thump,
yep.
double taps one arm.
I got
wow.
8 shots, Dave. I got 8. I got
I
8
well,
shots.
yeah, they might have
You
added
know,
more, but
the little shot card. Well, you probably had the vaccinations that you didn't need, but if you don't have come in with records that have certain vaccinations on it, they give you a vaccination card, and whatever you don't have, you get.
oh no, I got the triple hit. I got
Mhm.
triple tapped basic training,
Uh-huh.
ROTC advanced camp.
Did you lose your card?
They who what did they tell you? Right?
What
Like
do
they're
you
like,
mean?
"Well, you have your card," and I'm like at advanced camp. I'm like, no one said to me, bring the card.
No,
I thought you guys had the card.
this
Look,
tells you the
in
difference on.
OBC, I got hit again in
Oh my
OBC,
god.
and
This
so
this tells you the
of course
difference
that
on
might have
how
meant a lot to some
this
people.
tells you the difference how me and Dave grew up. When they shot me with those 8 needles and gave me that card, I held on to that thing with all my life
My.
because I didn't want it again. Um, but seriously, going back to this is why you can't eradicate certain things because there's not enough people vaccinated. Like there's a reason vaccinations exist. We would all be sick every single day if no one was vaccinated. It's insane. Um, but
We have
people,
another plague floating around here.
what people don't understand is when you are a citizen of a nation, that's also doubles as you signing a social contract with that country that you're a citizen of. And when things become harmful to others, the government can step in and say, this is what you have to do. This is why if you haven't been vaccinated with chicken pox at a certain time of season, certain people in my classroom in elementary school used to disappear because, it's just it's insane to me. But back to the firings, it's like I had the number up here, but I mean, we've got people in charge in high positions in the FBI that were podcasters with no military, no police background, no investigative background, but they're YouTubers and podcasters, and now they're in high positions within the FBI. Hell, who knows? Probably the CIA. I don't know that, but we know a couple of them from FBI. Dave, that's literally insane.
It is, and the firings here seem to, starting with Doge, and some of the stuff they did, just uh, they seem to start from the point of view again that the vilification, right? The explanation in MAGA for any problem is that there are bad actors out there, and so the problem with government is the people in government, right? They're bad actors, and and so you basically look at government employees as just wrong, guilty until proven innocent, and that's just so nonsensical, and just callous, but also just there's no respect for the laws, for the procedures, and in many cases, they've had to walk it back. And, a lot of these firings are going to be overturned. I think the FTC commissioner was just upheld by the Supreme Court, but a lot of other ones are going to be, very, very, contested. And it's just ridiculous to get rid of people especially in areas that are non-controversial, like the weather service. I mean, and in the health and human service. I mean, there's so many things that are not controversial that the government does that have never just even come up, but suddenly you're doing this. So it makes no sense. Get in your plane, Harold. Go.
Well, Harold, we also have this problem. It's trying to get rid of something because of one entity and not understanding all the other things, like these people that were happy that they were talking about getting rid of welfare, and you had all these people out here partying and happy because they keep picturing welfare as minorities, which we know that's not the majority of people on welfare, getting food stamps. That's all they would think about. But they are
Right.
forgetting that welfare is also housing. Welfare also takes care of veterans. Welfare, there's Medicaid, Medicare. And then when they lose stuff, they're like, hey, what happened? I thought that just had to deal with food stamps. No, you fool. You're championing for something and you don't even know how it affects you personally. That's the idiocracy.
I agree 100%. And, when we look at, you know, these various systems and what I see with all the firings and then the placement of individuals who have basically no experience, I'm going to take y'all back to a term that we heard back in 2016, but we hadn't heard it in a while. It's called deep state. It was alleged that there was a deep state that was running the government. They were doing this, they were doing that, and Trump couldn't do what he wanted to do, and we need to get rid of the deep state. And what I'm seeing now with these firings of individuals who basically took an oath to the Constitution and were experienced in doing the job of government to protect and serve the people in which they're governing, this particular administration is now moving in the direction of creating a deep state. Um, Hearing from some people on the ground, even in, I think, DC, Baltimore area, where we just had the National Guard and ICE or whoever, whatever agencies that they had running around there. Some of those individuals, from my understanding, from people that live in the area, said that those individuals were members of the Proud Boys. And so we don't know who's running around these communities, snatching up bodies, and shipping them off to wherever. But I'm concerned that the very deep state that was talked about in the previous election, the previous term, is what's being created now for the future. And if we're not careful, we're going to see ourselves regressing even more and more and more and not getting much done government wise, as this government is slowly turning into something that we may not recognize if we're not careful.
The fear mongering is at an all time high. Fear mongering has always been a tactic, correct, Dave? I mean, it's not a new thing on either side, Republican or Democrat or whatever.
No.
It's always been a thing, but it's at an all time high. When we talk about the continuous war on education, so Oklahoma has proposed what we're calling its woke test. Um, what is it? A proposal, political and ideological screening for teachers to combat woke indoctrination and ensure teachers align with Oklahoma's values. Who it affects teachers from specific states such as New York and California who wish to work in Oklahoma. What it tests? Basic
Those
knowledge of
5
American
people are
civics,
screwed.
like the Constitution and Declaration of Independence, other topics. Because if you don't know too much about American civics and Constitution, God forbid you can't be a math teacher, right? Other topics, simply questions about biology based on Oklahoma standards are also included. The goal to create patriotic citizens throughout this assessment. Oh, only in the Midwest Bible Belt. So if you're from New York or California, you've got to take what's being deemed the woke test. Dave, what
Oh,
say you?
I'm ready.
One
You're
one's
gonna
mind
fail. You're gonna
boggled.
fail, Harold, miserably. You'll probably be the first zero on that test.
I expect I could pass the test if I picked wrong what I thought were wrong answers. And the question is, you're going to ask questions about the Declaration of Independence, and it's the question, right? What's the question going to be?
Yeah.
And the Trump administration has promulgated this idea of patriotic education,
Mhm.
and they actually have definitions in the executive orders, and the idea that the founding principles of the United States are, it's basically American exceptionalism, that the founding principles are good, that America has continually moved closer to its ideals. The ideals are good. America has continually moved closer to the ideals. Of course, I've read all the things and I'm like, well, if we moved closer to the ideal, then, I mean, yeah, I would say, yeah. Like, we don't have slavery anymore and women can vote. So, yeah, I guess we have moved forward. The question is, if you move closer to the ideal, doesn't that mean you were farther away from it before? Right? So it doesn't hold together logically. They're trying to create a definition, and when they do, they have real trouble defining what woke means, right? They have, and with regard to this, though, I'm just wondering, what teacher goes from New York or California to Oklahoma.
No,
I mean,
they
the
did.
pay drop must be outrageous.
The
I mean,
pay drop's outrageous, but the cost of living drop is just as great. Well, I say that when I see people in North Carolina that come from New York. I suppose if you move from New York to Oklahoma, you're doing that thing where you're trying to move to a, I guess, smaller, more family oriented place. But Oklahoma, I don't think should be on the first on the list. Not if there's any Oklahomans out there. I'm sorry. I'm just saying. Um, I heard the first question on the test is Jesus white.
and see, that's the thing is I
I
know
failed.
the answer they want.
I
I also
failed.
know the correct answer.
No,
Yeah, but I
Harold,
can't lie.
but
I
Harold,
can't lie though.
well, see,
Like, I'm sorry.
then you don't want a job
You're right.
because
You're right.
This, and again, this will never stand. This
no,
will never survive a court
Mhm.
challenge.
Right.
And for a whole bunch of reasons.
Well,
Um,
Dave, the number one reason it can't pass is you can't. Let's say if it was something that could be passed, it has to be uniform. You can't pick certain states and just say, "Hey, if you come from these
right.
states, you have to take the test."
And there's a lot of things that the problem is there's this absence of what John Rawls called the veil of ignorance, right? The idea he argued that societies need to write their rules. You need to write your rules from a veil of ignorance. So when you say what when you write a rule for a situation, but where two people are interacting, you have to not know which side you're going to be on, right? It's kind of like the equivalent of, hey, you break the cookie in half and the other guy chooses which half they get. So you don't know which half you're going to get. So you're going to do everything you're in the veil of ignorance. You're going to make sure the cookie is as even as possible because you don't know what side you're going to be on, right? What side you're going to get. And this seems to have flown out, because again, if you say the president can fire everybody, if you say that a state can discriminate, if you say they can put in a test for political attitudes, then that can be done in every other state. Then every other administration can fire everybody. And, and you're not recognizing you're not always going to be in the position you're in. And it seems to have just left the building entirely at this point. That was the plane landing right there.
Yeah, I thought Harold was just going to jump in. Hey, here's Bill Burr commenting on woke.
You know what's funny is white liberals are the ones that gave the definition of woke to whites on the right. So no white people really understand, it seems, what that word really meant when they took it from black people. So people on the right just think it means an insufferable, self-involved liberal douche. And they're not wrong if they're talking about a white person. Right. Running around crying about their pronouns is like the sun is like lighting the planet on fire. See, look how scared you are about pronouns. It's unbelievable.
They like when you talk
Meanwhile,
about
the rest of the world doesn't want to take our food because they see what we look like. They don't want our beautiful chicken. They don't want our beautiful beef. Yeah, why is that? Why would you think?
It is just always the best.
Go to Europe and if you can, and eat a tomato and see what it really is supposed to taste like. This is a tomato?
That's a good advice.
Oh my God.
It's so funny what he's talking about. Like, people use words, and it's funny what he said about food, Dave. I didn't know this. When Subway first went to open in Ireland, they were denied because Ireland's standard of food is so much higher than ours. They didn't consider the bread as food because it had too much sugar in it.
Mm,
So we eat
wow.
stuff that other countries go, yeah, you can't open that here unless you change a bunch of things because this is not really food. It's not nutritional. That is crazy. I never thought a society that lived off of what do they always say, potatoes and cabbage, would turn down our food.
Well, I got to say though, he's very funny,
Mhm.
and he is right in the middle, right?
Mhm.
Bill Barr, and because he's no fan of Trump,
Yeah,
but
because Ben Shapiro went to his show and then wrote about how Bill Burr used to be funny, but he's too woke. And Bill Burr's like, why'd you even come to my show? You knew what you were doing. You just wanted something to write about. You don't even know what that word means, Ben Shapiro.
and I think that there is a point to be made. I was watching the Sunday morning thing a few weeks ago, back when I was still in North Carolina, so a couple of weeks ago, and Rance Priebus was holding forth on the problem that Democrats have. Now, Rance Priebus is not the sharpest knife in the drawer, if you ask me. However, he wasn't wrong. I was like looking up very slowly, like, huh? What's he saying? And because he was making the point that Democrats are not in touch with their base. They're not in touch with the people. And they don't see, he's spewing in a humorous form all this thing that white liberals are insufferable, right? And because they freaking are. And if you're worried, if you're worried too much about that, if you're worried about pronouns and all this other stuff, a lot of people just are not on board with that. Now, this is not to diminish the very real angst, let me be a little woke, uh, that a non-binary or transgender person goes through when they're misgendered or other things. And we understand, but there's this level at which if you're going to attack someone for calling you ma'am, because you're assuming my gender, and it's like most people go, well, all right, I guess but they're trying to be nice to you. How do you not recognize that their intent was to be respectful and polite to
Because
you?
nobody measures intent. I had an insurance salesman friend that had to walk out because he told the lady that she would be grandfathered in, and she went off on him. She
Because
said
of
that's
saying
sexist. She didn't know what the term grandfathered mean.
right, and that's the shit that people in the center hate, right? And they see and the problem the Democrats have is it's been shown, like there's research, the activists that Democrats send out knocking on doors are just way, way progressive. They're way out of touch with the people they're trying to communicate with. And that's where a lot of their problems go. So Rance Priebus, in talking about it, like I said, yes, I think even though I dislike your politics, I basically from a conservative point of view, nevertheless, I'm like, yeah, you nailed it. And this is a real problem, I think, because if you don't like Trump, you gotta, who's going to beat him, right? And our
Well,
mutual,
let's get the answer from Byron Donald's best friend Harold here.
yeah, I'm sorry, I've been
Byron Donald's, that's your boy, ain't it, Harold?
who is that?
No, no,
Byron Donald. He
no,
he
no,
he
no.
hasn't found a microphone that he will not fall on with his black conservative view. Me and Harold have this thing when black conservatives talks, and we just look at him and go, "What are you talking about?"
Well, I'm not going to spend a lot of energy on him. I don't want to give him that.
No.
Let him live rent free in my head. But I do want to go back to Oklahoma real quick because I
Uh-huh.
never got a chance to
Yes.
chime in.
As the educator, I wanted to come to you. Let's go ahead.
I'm such an
Yeah,
ass tonight. I'm sorry.
You're such a what?
I'm such an ass tonight. I'm sorry. I'm holding my head down and shit. I'm
well, I mean, I look at the audacity of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And doing some research, a little bit of research, and it's cursory. But in I think 2010 and 2011 is when they were 17th ranked in education. Now they're 50th. I don't know anybody that's going to be gravitating to go over there, to play on a losing team. I'm just saying, I don't know what they have to show for it. Now, if they showed improvements going from 50 to 17, now you might attract some people. But going in reverse, and what do they have to show for it? They've increased their investments in education and got nothing for it. So the rate of return, or ROI, is negative with respect to Oklahoma and what they've been able to accomplish with funding. So if anything, the federal government, not the state itself, interestingly, it is one of two states that voted unanimously for a presidential candidate. All counties voted for the current administration. Massachusetts is the other that all of those counties voted for Harris. And interestingly, they're on two opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to education. Massachusetts is up, within the top 10. And here is, Oklahoma, ranked number 50th right now in education. So how do you sit up and try to make this whole idea of a test to be a teacher as if you're drawing the best people? And I know at the first administration, they were going to be hiring the brightest and the best, but that doesn't appear to be the case in Oklahoma because they have nothing to show for it and nothing to justify where they are and how they got to where they are. And I think it should be a federal takeover, probably the first of its kind, of the Oklahoma School Department of Education, so they could try to get it back on track and hopefully move in a direction that's going to benefit those children. Not to mention that they do also have a high dropout rate in Oklahoma as well. So it doesn't help your education system when students themselves don't want to stay and be miseducated.
They also have a lot of
within what
cities
they-
that have high crime rates, like Lawton, Oklahoma. We don't talk about those. Um, you know, oh, why did I bring that? Wait, Dave, you've spent time in Lawton, Oklahoma, right? I have.
I lived there. Yeah. Well, I lived outside. Fort Sill is in Lawton.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Was it as rough as when you were there as when I was there? Because that's probably about like a decade or so
I don't
apart.
remember it being terribly rough.
Oh, yeah.
It was not a garden spot. But although I have to say, when me and my first wife were there, that's where I met my first wife, and we used to joke, at least we weren't in Fayetteville.
And now you're in Fayetteville. Wow.
Not at this exact moment, but yes, I do live in Fayetteville and have
Wow.
lived there for 30 years.
Wow.
Although Fayetteville's very nice.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
Fayetteville's actually very nice now, so I don't know what the people are.
Hey, well, everybody has a different determination of nice. What Oklahoma should do is let Dr. Umar open a school, Harold. That's what they should do.
Oh,
Just let him open a bunch of schools.
no.
We're not even going to get into that. So we've
No.
name dropped two things today: Byron Daniels and Dr. Umar. All right, I'm not even going to call him doctor. I'm just going to call him Gerald or whatever his real name is. But the biggest things we talked about today were the firings and the continuing firing of people in positions that are necessary. A lot of the people that championed Doge to do all of these firings are now suffering, and now they want to make their videos. It's almost like, when Trump was elected, and in the first 3 months, we see all these regret videos. It's like, what do you want me to do about it? So the problem I have is when you have conversations with people, as soon as someone says there's no good politician, the government doesn't do anything, it's like, why even have the conversation? If you truly think no one in the government does anything, this country would be flat on its ass. It's just a stupid talking point that people like to shout out when they have no concrete conversation or debate to have with you.
Agreed.
And I think one of the things that the Doge folks, because they were kind of separate, right? I don't think a lot of Republicans were necessarily on board with that.
No, they weren't.
Is that they just weren't getting what was understood by politicians, that everyone hates the government, everyone doesn't hate, but they like a lot of what the government does, and that the government does a whole lot of things and has been doing a whole lot of things that are actually very beneficial. But we like to say the worst thing Reagan, the worst thing you can hear is that I'm from the government, I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
And right, this is someone who's never had FEMA show up after a natural disaster.
Right.
This is someone who hasn't had their bank deposits guaranteed. Right.
I don't have a problem when you say that statement. I have a problem when other Republicans say, well, all of us weren't for what Doge was doing. Yeah, but you didn't say anything. When you don't say something, silence is agreement in a lot of spaces.
They have sat by. They are complicit. They are very complicit. And I think they're probably, at some level very worried about this. Because they're watching these idiots come in, and it's understood in politics, these double standards, that yes, there's an inconsistency. We're talking out one side of our mouth, but it was kind of a nuance that was understood, that people hated the government, but God, do not touch a lot of what the government does. And Doge comes in like a wrecking ball. And these guys, they did push back on Doge in a lot of cases, and probably more quietly and
Well,
behind the scenes.
I saw some pushback, but the pushback that I saw from certain places were when town hall meetings were happening and people were losing jobs and benefits and they were getting upset. And that's usually what happens. You start yelling at, your representative, and then now they've got to do some pushback or they're not getting voted in next time.
Well, don't forget, a lot of the pushback from Doge came from Trump's cabinet,
Mhm.
right? That, in
Yeah.
fact, Elon Musk was eventually on the outs
Mhm.
because the cabinet revolted. Quite, they're not going to do it. They got to kiss ass, right? This
Yeah.
is, but they're a bunch of sycophants. But even they were willing. They were willing to take on the other guy, and
Mhm.
so I don't know. I'm gonna let
So,
Harold.
Harold, I want to talk about something that you brought up earlier before the show. We talked about first. I don't even what the criteria for assassination versus murder. I guess he's a political figure, so um, I've already heard people talking about the gun laws. And what's funny, not what happened to Charlie Kirk, but what's funny is I'm watching videos of people talking about gun laws who made fun of and yelled at people who talked about gun laws. And like you said, well, where was this person when children were being shot in schools? It's amazing what it takes for some people to come around to something that obviously should be happening. And I think one of the big problems is we've talked about this when we always talk about politics is when someone hears a phrase, their brain tells them something different. Gun control does not equal I'm taking your gun.
No, I mean, and the bottom line is, we I don't know what type of mindset we have in our country. I mean, obviously, our priority isn't safety. We talk about safety. We now even want to rename the Department of Defense, Department of War, or whatever we're trying to call it now. But I'm sorry, Dave. I mean, we got the Gulf of America, I guess. We're the only one on the planet calling it that, but yeah, hey, we got it. So, but no, when we look at these events that transpire, and sadly, our priorities are not to try and right the wrongs or protect people. They're protecting certain interests, and that's what their focus is. And at the end of the day, it's all about selling guns, not, you know, restricting guns. And so we had I do remember, I think it was part of the 92 crime bill, was it? Correct me if I'm wrong, Dave. The 94 crime bill where they did the assault ban. I think that was part, I'm not sure if it was in that bill or a
The
different bill,
Brady
but
bill.
huh?
The Brady bill.
The
You
Brady
know,
bill, okay. But we've had the ban before and we didn't hear that outcry because why? Things were happening. People were being targeted. These guns were on the streets and they were killing people. And now we're at a point to where it seems that there is nothing these people will give up,
no, it
or in exchange for restricting them access to certain types of weapons. And you're not saying all guns, you're saying certain types. And I know part of the
well,
argument is, well, if they start with this gun, then what's to stop them from going to the next one and adding additional guns to the list?
one of
But
the
at the end of
things
the day,
is
do we want to protect our people or don't we? I'm sorry,
like
I'm landing.
no, you're fine. You're saying the kinds, but what they're also saying is it's not also just a kind. It's when can you have one? What can be in your record to have one? This country has had Do you know what the earliest date of a school shooting was in this country? If you could just take a guess, what do you just throw a random date? What do you think the first school shooting on record is in this country?
Uh, I would say probably somewhere in the 1800s. I don't know, but I would venture
Eight,
to say.
1840. Then there were school shootings in 1853, 56, 1858, 1860, 1864, 67, 1871, 72. There has been school shootings from 1840 all the way up to today, almost every couple of years. That's, I don't know the math on that. Is that 200 years or 300 years? It's 200
There,
years,
there was,
1840. So it's been a constant problem for 2 centuries.
and
Two
there was one
centuries.
today. It was overshadowed by the incident that happened with Charlie Kirk, but there was another school
Mhm.
shooting today.
Oh,
Yeah. So
Well, Charlie Kirk was technically a school shooting too, because
Because it was at a it was
so
at
there's
it happened
two.
at a university,
well,
right?
you know
Although
what?
I think it's a little different. Yeah.
When I saw the headlines, I was thinking, wait, in Utah? I was like, that's not something well, I don't know. I just don't. Utah was just like,
You know,
what, in Utah? But
I'm
yeah,
with
go ahead, Dave.
you. I think I'm with you on this in that, um, uh, to my mind, my problem with it is, I'm like cars. Let's just
Hmm.
use the car analogy. Um, I don't need to have a restriction on the type of car I drive, right?
Hmm.
So if I want to have a Maserati or I want to have, I don't know that I need a restriction on that. We need restrictions on who can drive. Have you demonstrated that you are in fact capable of driving? Are you carrying insurance? Are you maintaining a record that allows you to drive? You're not doing DUIs. And I always said, I can't believe we're not going to regulate the ownership of guns, and especially outside the household, the more, at least as much as cars. And because I just think that people are, uh, one, I think it part of it is this unfortunate view of the vilification, right? The the idea that other people are so dangerous that I need this weapon. And also, I think that these are some of the biggest wusses I've ever met. I was checking out a Lowe's, and some dude is there in line with a 357, and I said, "Sir," I didn't say this because I don't get in people's face. I try to let them live their life. But in my head, I was like, I am standing in Lowe's. I have probably got 100 oh, maybe not. I probably got several dozen paratroopers all around me right now. My 82nd boys will come to my aid if I am beset by some cartoonish villain, right? I do not need to worry. Same thing in New York. I always knew New Yorkers had come to my aid. And, I believe in the people around me. And I think you are the biggest coward I've ever met, that you are out at Lowe's with a very large frame pistol. And I'm not going to do the compensation thing, because it's probably not about that, although it might be. But the thing is that
Wow.
I just look at it and I go, you are just the biggest wuss I've ever met. And I really want to say that to the guy. And I'm not worried about him having a gun because, he draws it, he's in trouble. But the thing is, though, that it was just this
He
thing of
wouldn't shoot
what are
you.
you saying to everyone around you about this? And don't you
Well,
trust the people around you? And what happened to that? Yes, there are bad actors out there, but the good folks at Lowe's are probably on my side.
well, also it's that usually a lot of times people with gun, people get guns because they want protection. They say that, right? But there's so many people that get into trouble because they have a gun. I had a friend who's so anti-confrontational. As soon as he got a gun, guess what? He became confrontational. And speaking of Lowe's, that same Lowe's on Skybo, right? Is that the Lowe's you
Mhm.
were at? Yeah. So I was at that Lowe's when I bought a house in Fayetteville, and they gave me cash back from when I closed. They gave me it was like $5,300, right? They gave it to me in an envelope. Right. So I'm at Lowe's because that's what you do when you buy a brand new house. You still have to go to Lowe's for some reason. So I'm in Lowe's and I realized when I got to my car, I left the envelope at the cash register. So I darted through the into the exit and I almost ran into this lady and her husband. And he goes, "You effing idiot." And then I went and got my money. And so I was walking it back. I said, "You know what? I almost ran smack into that lady. She almost dropped the wood she was carrying. So I should apologize." So I walk over and I said, "Hey, excuse me." And he turns around. He's got a gun on his hip and he's got his hand near his gun. And I said, "Hey, sorry for rushing into you and almost hitting you guys. I left this a large envelope of money at the cash register. And that's all that was on my mind." And she said, "Thank you." And I was like, I thought she was saying thank you with an attitude to me. But when I turned around, I could hear her say, "You big idiot," and you were about to pull out your stupid gun because you thought somebody was coming over here to be a jerk. But
How anyone doesn't look at you with your Wayne or your what's that dude from you always remind me of the guy from the improv show.
Wayne Brady.
Yeah, I was like, I wanted to say Wayne Brady. I'm like, isn't that a quarterback? Anyway,
No.
uh,
Wow. Okay. I can't with you. Hey, Dave, do you know who Shiloh Hendrix is?
oh, that name does ring a bell, but I do not know.
You and I are in the wrong business. So people always ask me, how the hell, if you think Trump is racist and people are anti-racist in this country, how did he win? Well, I'll give you an example how he won. Shiloh Hendrix is a white woman from Minnesota who went viral after she was caught on camera using a racial slur against a 5-year-old child at a park on 28 April and has received unexpected support more than $790,000 in online donations. The money came from Give and Go, a platform known for hosting fundraisers linked to far right causes. Her campaign drew over 30,000 supporters, many of whom left donation messages containing racial slurs and Nazi symbols. This lady calls a 5-year-old the N-word and makes almost $1 million. I'm in the wrong business.
Yeah,
I'm in the wrong
me too.
business. I'm in the
Me
wrong
too.
business, Dave. I'm doing it wrong. So I have proposed what I'm going to do is find 20 Caucasian women to do this, and I'm just going to share the money with them because I need to retire. What
Yeah, I
the
get
hell,
20%.
Dave?
I get 20%.
Oh,
Let's go.
30,000 donations, almost $1 million because
Crazy.
she called a 5-year-old the N-word.
Yeah, well, it's because she got called on it, and because it's that vilification, the idea that all these other people are out there, and it's kind of like, I mean, other things that bother me. I was out with my grandchildren in Durham at the Science Museum thing, and this dude has this shirt on, and this T-shirt, and I'm behind him walking in, and I read it, and it's like, if you don't, if you don't like the fact I'm waving the flag and I'm doing all this shit, and it's just all this stuff and I'm just sitting here going, why is this shirt assuming I'm an asshole? Right? Like, what
Shirt
is
don't
it
know me.
about your shirt? But it's that attitude that they're signaling that everyone. At another point in my neighborhood, I had it was up by where you remember when
Hold on, Dave.
my daughter lived.
Hold on, Dave. Harold just came up with a new shirt.
Oh,
What's that slogan, Harold?
Which one are you
You,
talking about? I do
your,
so many slogans.
your shirt don't know me, bro.
I love that.
Your shirt don't know me. Yeah.
You got to put the bro in there.
But there was a guy in my neighborhood who had all these signs like posted all around his house about how they don't call 911, and it was all just this, we're going to shoot anyone who comes in the house. And I remember thinking, like, I'm your neighbor, I'm walking my dog, and you're threatening me,
They're not threatening you, Dave. You
well,
know
but
that.
they're threatening everybody with these signs. And I was just like, none of the people that are actually
Dave,
are these people.
we know who those signs are for.
Oh, well, yeah.
They're not for you, Dave.
They're not for me.
They're not for you, Dave.
But that makes me think about. Did you see the documentary on Katrina? That's on Netflix. There's a documentary on Katrina on Netflix, and one of the episodes, it shows where some of the black residents were trying to go to one of the piers because they were being, I guess, catching boats trying to get out of New Orleans. They had to go through this affluent area that had been hit by the hurricane, and these individuals, vigilantes, decided that they were going to basically shoot anybody and accuse them of looting, even though the people were just walking through trying to go to
I saw that
a
on the
safe haven.
news during Katrina. Yeah, I saw that on the news.
It's crazy.
Well, it's not funny, but we talk about headlines and how narratives are pushed. We've talked about narratives on the show, and the biggest narrative I can remember from Katrina, I cannot remember what news outlet did this, but it was a news outlet when I lived in Miami, and they put up the same newspaper and they put it up side by side on the screen. It had Caucasian people stealing out of a store, and the
Yep.
headline said, "People do all they can to survive." And that
Yep.
very same newspaper, the very same store, had black people coming out of it and said, "Looting runs rampant in New Orleans." And I'm like, you can't win
No, you
when the
can't.
narrative
And
is pushed.
but
So
that's been a
that
media issue for a long time.
that goes, yeah. So it's, it's again, we circle all the way back to fear mongering,
Well, yeah, and that being afraid of anyone who's different
Mhm.
than you,
Yeah.
and although they do say that professors are the enemy, right? So
Mhm.
I am
Well,
sometimes I'm
well,
not I'm not on site in their targets, but there's a categorization.
you're the enemy because you're an educator. Educators are
Yeah.
always the enemy. People in power don't like educated people. Um, and that's how a lot of people feel,
Hmm.
because your problem, Dave, is you're woke. And it's like so stupid. "Oh, I'm sorry, I believe in rights of people. That makes me woke." Like,
I gotta tell you, this might be weird. This might get me
mhm.
canceled. Um,
Uh-oh.
but ever since the whole, I'm a guy. Like, look at me, right?
Mhm,
I'm an old white guy, right?
mhm.
And so you might think I voted a certain way, and so I go around Fayetteville, uh, and I'm in the Food Lion, and it,
That's a grocery store here, Harold.
it's a Food Lion here, and um a lot of African American people in there. And so like I'm now like it's fucking Mayberry, right? I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" And like these people are like at some level they're probably, "Why is this dude talking to me?" Because I'm just like, "No, I'm going to be so overtly nice to all these people of color that it's clear that I could not possibly be." But, and I mean, I'm exaggerating it a little bit, but I kind of made this thing like, "Hey, I need to reach out and let them know by my attitude I didn't do this," right? So I'm not here to say I'm not racist, because I'm not going to say that, because it's hard not to, we won't go there. But you get what I'm saying, right? I don't believe that you can say that.
If
You
you're
Right.
not
always have to
racist,
be
Actions
guarded.
you're
speak
not.
You always
louder than
have
uh,
to
words.
be evaluating. And so maybe I am woke. But I have had the greatest experience. Black people are wonderful. They're like freaking Mayberry, because when you do that, they're like laughing with me. And not to go there and but it's just the experiences I have now as I started doing that. And I realized that one of the most dangerous things I learned as a kid in the 80s: avoid eye contact, right? Like when you're out in a crime, because I lived in New York when New York was actually a cesspool and getting worse,
when
right? I mean,
you're
it was a
not
freaking,
racist, you don't have to say it. And Dave never has to says Keone is my friend. So,
but
so
but one of the things I learned as a kid was avoid eye contact and you'll get through. And I realized that if you do that, if you're braised as the white kid, right, going into New York with all those bad people, um what vibe are you sending out? You're not acknowledging people. You're not, and when people get acknowledged, everybody, I don't care who you
so
are.
you're being a New Yorker.
I'm being fucking Mayberry. I'm being Mayberry. Everyone who walks by, I'm like I'm Boat Dave,
So you're a
right?
weirdo
Everybody who
in New
goes
York.
by, I'm like, "Hey, how's it going?"
Oh yeah, you're a weirdo. Yeah.
But I am just saying that, since doing that,
Hmm.
um I get nothing but positive,
Feedback. Yeah.
reactions to that,
Hmm.
because we're all out at the goddamn food store, right? No one's
Yeah.
here. This is not in the middle of the night in on the Merc. you know I'm not I'm not where they're selling drugs or anything. I'm in the freaking Food Lion. And the thing about it is, my perception of folks is so much more positive as a result of that. And the MAGA folks, if they're buying into black men are threatening, they're probably getting a lot of reflection back. They're probably getting a lot of social reflectivity. and they are having experiences very different than mine. And I really, it sounds very trite and Pollyanna and stupid and naive, but I really feel that way. That I just started, like, everyone you say hi to, and these people are often like, "Who the hell is this dude?" But they're very nice in return, and so again, it's just this thing of like people are basically not assholes, you know. But that's not what these folks on the right are perpetuating. That's my biggest, and it's a shame that they're living that life. I feel sorry for them, really. And if that's woke, then the hell with y'all.
I think more of a lot of it's conditioning. What I've learned, and there's a lady on TikTok that I recently encountered. Her name is Kelly Snyder, and she's some type of psychologist, psychiatrist, therapist, but she's done a lot of analyzing. And basically, she opened up and shared how she had been conditioned to believe, and some of the stuff that we talked about earlier, um, John, is that, when you hear poverty, you think African American. When you hear welfare, you think African American. And that's part of the conditioning process, so that's where people's minds automatically go. And people automatically assume, unfortunately, uh, that that's what it is. But I encourage, you and your listeners to check her out, look at a few of her videos. But she's been very informative in helping me understand how we got to where we are. And, if you don't know how you got there, it's going to be difficult to figure out how to get out of there. So I want to encourage that. To your point, Dave, and what you were saying, it's difficult to know what to do and how to respond in certain situations because you don't know how that other person may view you, whether they're of the same race or a different race. Because if you had been that way around those people in a quote unquote around a motorcycle club, the reaction might have been a little bit different, coming from all sides. So it's one of those things that we got to find ways to build bridges, and we got to find ways to be that very thing that we claim we are, which is the United States of America, so that we don't have to deal with all of the stuff that's out there, and we can actually have a more united front and see the advancement of our country go to bigger and better places. And I will land my plane there.
And I'll just add to that the United States is maybe more like a Food Lion than a motorcycle club, right? In terms of the people who are here. I mean, like I say, I'm not going down into the hood and walking around like, "Hey, everyone, if I'm nice to you, you won't steal my car." Although I don't really know where the hood is in Fayetteville because I'm not sure. I think
Oh
even
dear
that's
God.
kind of a construct.
Oh my God.
At the same time, it's like, look,
He's
there are
embarrassing.
some places that are crime ridden. There are some people who are going to do these things, but the person who's in the freaking Food Lion with you is not a problem. Most likely. And in America, the people that are around you are not your enemy.
No, it's
Most
the
likely.
immigrants.
Stop it.
Especially the immigrants. The
Stop it.
immigrants are the best people we have around. They are us. They are the people that are coming in that are striving for a better life. There's nothing more goddamn American than that. Your friend Cello, even though he pissed me off sometimes.
We're not friends anymore, but keep going.
All right, but even he is got that. Even I don't agree with his politics, and I don't like that he vilifies people. Nevertheless, he came and he's America. Okay.
Yeah. Oh no! Please don't say that. Please don't say
Well,
he's America. Please don't. Let's
at
just move
some
on.
level, he's a guy. He's making life better. Can't we respect? I don't agree with his
Listen,
politics. I don't agree with his view of others.
Oh my God.
But
America has good, bad, and ugly, so we got to accept all of it.
All right.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah, we
Sure.
do, and that's the problem. We aren't accepting people who are different than us.
No, I
Right?
accept people who are different than me. I just don't accept assholes.
Well, yeah, I can go there. I have expressed very negative views in the past, but at another
Well,
level, I'm just like, well, we could do worse. And certainly the
This
guys who are
was
coming
this
in and
was
working.
such a great show. I was so happy, and you just crashed me right at the end.
I'm glad I did.
All right.
Bonsai.
Are we gonna talk about the high? Who's that?
Shout out all my white people.